Bespoken Spirits is a modern spirits company blending technology and tradition to take craft spirits to entirely new heights. Their unique craft maturation process unlocks amazing flavor combinations while reducing the environmental impact of each sip. The process is all natural and uses only the highest quality ingredients carefully sourced from the best mills, coopers, and distilleries. The result is an unparalleled flavor experience and something you can feel good about drinking. But don't take our word for it, try it yourself. Bespoken Spirits award-winning products can be purchased through retailers or online. Learn more at www.bespokenspirits.com.
Proudly made in the USA and inspired by the American lifestyle, Country Smooth Bourbon was developed by the first female founder and CEO of an American bourbon whiskey company as a refined experience to be savored on its own or enjoyed in cocktails. We are dedicated to celebrating the spirit of America and the crafting of premium bourbon whiskey. To learn more, visit countrysmooth.com, where you can order online or find a retailer near you. Cheers. Country Smooth. Female founded, country grounded.
With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, live in the Bourbon Life studios tonight is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing really good, man. We had a great weekend this weekend, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we did. We did have an exciting weekend this weekend. Are we giving it away or no?
Well, I posted some pictures already so people could see.
You would.
But Bardstown Bourbon, man, they allowed us to come down and allowed us to go into one of their rick houses, and not just any rick house, but the rick house with Pete's Bar in it, and allowed us to take some photos for our website for the Bourbon Life. So there were 4 of us plus our photographer, Bill Cole, who's here in Lexington. But man, we had a blast. I felt like a rock star.
Yeah, no doubt about that. We were certainly treated to a great morning.
Yeah, we definitely were. Matt, I do have to throw out some birthday wishes for people last week. I forgot completely. I just got sidetracked and forgot to write that down. But Eric Strunk, Kevin Parker, Walt Burnside, happy birthday to you last week. And then this week we got Rick Winters and Chad Cathell. So guys, happy birthday. We appreciate your support in the Barrel Society, the Bourbon Life Barrel Society. So we really appreciate that. We definitely want to thank all our sponsors. And of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. Matt, with that said, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
I would love to, Mark. So we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. And joining us tonight from the Mile High City, we have the Master Distiller and Blender of Blackened Whiskey, Rob Dietrich. Rob, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thanks, gents. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. We're really happy to have you on the show. I know we've been talking about getting us together for a couple months or so, and we finally got it worked out schedule-wise. You're a busy man.
Yeah, I do get around. That's for sure.
That's a good life. You're truly living the bourbon life then, or the whiskey life, I should say, maybe.
I've got a pretty good whiskey life going here. I feel like I have my dream job. I get to make whiskey, drink whiskey, and talk about whiskey. So that's
great.
Pretty fun.
Yeah. See, I'm trying not to laugh as much. I just read a review on iTunes about the podcast. Somebody said that the host laughs too much during the show. So Rob, if you say something funny and I don't laugh hysterically, just please understand that, I'm trying to dial it.
That's some baloney, man. Be true to yourself there.
Yeah, exactly. I think laughing's the key.
Yeah, man, I agree. So, all right, Rob. So let's, before we jump in and start having a great conversation, let's talk about the great whiskey that we're going to drink. Can you tell everybody what we got poured up for us on this first round?
Yeah. So this is our Blackened American Whiskey. This was an original collaboration between the late great Dave Pickerel and the band Metallica.
Yeah.
And this is a blend of bourbon and rye. So we've got some Tennessee bourbon in there, a little Indiana rye, a little Indiana bourbon. We've got Canadian rye in there. All these are average age. Their average age is around 6.5 years in white American oak.
Okay.
And then we do a cask finish in Spanish brandy barrels, black brandy. So you get a nice balance of the sweetness of the corn. You get a little bit of the earthy tones of the rye, the spiciness of the rye, and then all that really is just kind of the layers are balanced out there with that black brandy cask finish.
Yeah, very nice. And this one comes in at 90 proof. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, 90 proof, and that is our workhorse. That is the backbone of what we set out to create a world-class whiskey, and it's what's fun. You have so many whiskeys out there that you have access to, and being able to take these great whiskeys that stand on their own and be able to blend them together to create a phenomenal whiskey. There's an art to that, and I think something that Dave was passionate about, and of course that's one of my passions is blending and the marriage of different whiskeys.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, I see you over there nosing it. What are you picking up on this one?
I pick up right away. I'm getting like a pie crust type aroma on the nose, and I think the finishing in the brandy cask is coming through with some stone fruit, picking up fig and picking up some dark grape in there, like thinking flavors from wine here, like maybe a little bit of currant, but it has some red wine type characteristics, I think, on the nose, and then I get like a little bit of like a sweet cream on the nose as well.
I've used almost all of those descriptors at various times, so you're right on the money with that.
Yeah, Matt's the guy with the palate. I'm just the guy that says it smells like vanilla and caramel, and but I actually do. Yeah, it smells like whiskey. But on the nose, it's funny because, and it may be the brandy finish to me, but I pick up a little, like a hint of leather off of it. Yeah. I don't know if that's ever come out before, and I don't know if it's the brandy, because there's another whiskey that I've had. I can't remember who it was, but it was finished in a brandy cask. And that leather note seemed to come through for me on that one as well. But yeah, it's definitely got a great nose to it. So Rob, let's talk about you. Talk about a little bit, tell our listeners, or a lot of it, I say a little bit, but take as much time as you'd like, because we want our listeners to actually know who you are. So tell everybody kind of who you are, what your background is, and then how you got involved in the whiskey industry.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a varied topic there. I grew up in Colorado, southern Colorado, just north of Telluride, and I've had quite a few jobs. I've spent some time in the Army. I was with the 10th Mountain Division. Did 3.5 years with them, and did a few tours with them as well. And then after I got out, I was living on the Oregon coast. I built an old school bus. I guess everybody calls them a schoolie now, but I had a half-size school bus that I built into a house, and I was living out of that, surfing on the Oregon coast, and ended up meeting the guy who ran Bill Graham Presents in San Francisco. So I was they put on concerts and music production. So I was in music production for about a decade. That's what that was my main vocation for a long time, and actually had worked a lot of great shows. Worked a Metallica show in '96 in San Jose, and it's just interesting. Years later, full circle, I'm out of the music production game, but working for Metallica, making their whiskey. So I love the full circle aspect of it. And I got in the whiskey game. I always enjoyed whiskey. I enjoyed drinking whiskey. I think I started out like most people do. They're drinking whiskey and Coke and not realizing that right. There's a whiskey under there waiting to come out. Wants to be tasted. And when I had a friend of mine who actually taught me how to taste a whiskey, that the way I kind of explain it is almost when you're watching the Wizard of Oz and when they're going from black and white to color, like the world just opened up, like, oh my God, there's a whole world here of whiskey profiles and flavors that you can do. And so I started out being a whiskey enthusiast, but I met the head distiller for Stranahan's Colorado Whiskey in 2006, and we hit it off over a mutual love of vintage motorcycles. At the time, I had a motorcycle that a buddy and I had built with a diesel engine from a cement mixer, and we were running it on vegetable oil. So we had
awesome.
We were into alternative fuel, and I had a Mercedes 300D car that I had modified to run off of the vegetable oil. I had a tank in the trunk.
No kidding.
Yeah, so that was so I was into alternative fuel, and the head distiller for Stranahan's was he was working on modifying his motorcycle to run off of the heads, which is the high proof waste product from the stills. And I thought, well, that's cool. Let's get our motorcycles together. And he's like, well, bring it down to the distillery. And I was like, wait, you have a distillery? And I hadn't heard of a distillery in Denver before. This is 2006, kind of the beginning of craft distilling and craft distilleries. And as soon as I came down there and I saw that 800 gallon copper still, the stripping still, I was like, I want to know how to make that machine run. I want to know how to make this equipment run. So I started working out, the bottling line very quickly, talked them into creating a night shift. They'd had a night shift, but the guy had left. So talked them into making another night shift. And I was working the 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. for about 4 years straight. So those are some weird hours to be awake and living when everybody else is sleeping. I didn't see my girlfriend at the time very often. I was living on a horse ranch and mucking stalls during the day and working with horses during the day and sleeping working at night and trying to sleep anywhere I could fit it in. So it was kind of a weird time frame, but that's where I cut my teeth was under the tutelage of Jess Graber, the legendary creator of Stranahan's and Tin Cup whiskey. And I'm very proud to have been able to work with him for many, many years, on the road with him. We always called it the Whiskey Road Show because we were, out talking whiskey and all over the country. So very, very proud to have worked under Jess Graber and learned from him and call him my mentor. I had a lot of fun. That's where I kind of cut my teeth in blending. Because I had this special limited release once a year called Snowflake. And that's where I would take the single malt whiskey we were making, and I'd have a variety of different cask finishes. And there might be a room full of barrels, anything from rum to Sherry Oloroso to Madeira to to Tempranillo or Cab Franc, all these different wines or different finishes, and then I would marry those together. And then I would just do a limited release every year of just that, that flavor profile. So that's really where I first started kind of understanding blending and wrapping my mind around blending. And then, after, Blackened had launched, they'd only been around for about 3 months. Dave, very, very suddenly and unfortunately passed away. I was at the event where he passed away in San Francisco at the Whiskey Fest there.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a very sad moment for all of us. We're all very close and tight knit, where we all know who each other are. We see each other and have worked with each other in a variety of ways. And so it was really, our community was definitely hard hit for sure with that. And then shortly after I was approached by somebody representing the band and they said, we love what you do with Stranahan's. We love what you do with the Snowflake and the blending. What would you think about jumping over and taking up the mantle where Dave left off? So,
wow.
And so, I'm a big Metallica fan as well. So for me, it was kind of the best of all the worlds. I got to, I'm still doing my dream job, making whiskey, talking whiskey, drinking whiskey. But now I get to do it with Metallica. So
it's like you've taken the best possible life, and then you added rock stars to that life and made it like this, like something beyond what anybody could ever imagine, Rob.
It's pretty extraordinary. I'm very humbled by all of it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you're with Stranahan's, and that was really American single malt, right? I mean, that's what you guys focused on there. And you're there for quite a while. Is that right?
Yeah, I was there for 12 years.
Okay.
And I've been in the whiskey game for about 15. So
Okay.
So I was a little over 12 at Stranahan's, and I was there when we created Tin Cup as well, and I was that had a little bit of Stranahan's that we blended in as well into that. So that was another kind of blend that we were working on as well. So it was really exciting to be able to work on that. And then the first thing I did when they asked me to join Blackened, I went out and bought a bottle and tried it. I got to try the whiskey first. That's going to tell me everything I need to know. And I was absolutely blown away by how what a quality whiskey and unique, just unique. And as I'm sure you're picking up some of these notes as you're sipping it there. Just those balance of those, to your point, Matt, the fruit notes of the brandy, balancing with those sweeter notes of the bourbon. And I love a good rye. I mean, I give me a good 95% rye and let it kick me in the teeth a little bit. And I enjoy playing around with a rye too. So that was kind of, for me, I was really proud to take over where Dave left off. And I really felt like I was bringing my own set of skill sets as well. And so we can work on other expressions and create, some new expressions as well. So it's been an extraordinarily fun time, and their exploration of blends, of working with blends, has been really a fun task.
Yeah. It's funny because listening to your story and your background and the things that you do, and looking at you and looking at Matt, you're like a 15-year-old older maybe version of Matt, because Matt he's lived in Colorado. He's lived in his modified van. He's camped out for years. He's done rock climbing. He's worked as a stagehand at times as well. I mean, Matt has done all this stuff, and he's got this great palate as well. So it's funny listening to your story. And the weird thing, you just mentioned the Wizard of Oz. Matt used that exact same analogy last week during our
really.
Yes.
No kidding.
When everything switched from black and white to color, he used that exact same analogy last week, and I was just like, "Oh, I mean, this is kind of weird, man."
That's funny. Really, I didn't realize, Matt. That's how I got into the music business. Was I was a rock climber as well, because I was with the 10th Mountain Division. We were mountaineering troops. That's where I learned how to rock climb.
Yeah, out of Vail, right?
They'd started in Vail, but
right.
Fort Drum is where they moved it to, upstate New York.
Okay.
But I had my climbing gear with me. I happened to have my climbing gear when they said, "Hey, do you want to work this concert?" It was a Tibetan Freedom concert in Golden Gate Park, and I said, "Well, I got my climbing gear," and they're like, "Okay, you're a rigger." And that was it. I was like, "Okay, cool. I can get paid to climb. Are you kidding me?"
Yep, been there. I was just doing that last week.
Yeah, nice. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, there you go. Seriously, man, it's so uncanny that the similarities there. That's really cool though, man. I really and Rob, thank you for your service as well. We appreciate.
Oh, it's very kind.
Definitely appreciate that. So just wanted to get that out there. So moving from Stranahan's, working on the single malt, and then coming over to Blackened. I mean, I'm assuming obviously you were able to bring things that you learned at Stranahan's to Blackened. But I mean, have there been other challenges that you faced that you maybe didn't expect, or what advantages maybe did you have that you coming over from Stranahan's that's really helped you?
Yeah, I think, with Blackened, we do work with another distillery. They are creating our whiskey with us in tandem with us and for us basically. So, I've definitely been used to grain to bottle experiences, and working with a blend was a unique, I'm used to making actually growing not growing the grain, but we get it from the malting facility and doing everything grain to bottle, and being able to know that, this is where the barrels are. When you're working with a blend, there's some new exciting challenges, finding more whiskey so you can maintain the quality and consistency of the blend, and then laying down new whiskey for that, to be able to look for future batches. So I love the challenge of it. I love the the unique differences. And, it's I think anytime you're in this kind of an industry, you want to keep learning. For me, that's, when I've been asked that, how does one become a master distiller or even a distiller? For me, getting the title, or, being bestowed the title of Master Distiller, just all that is just tells me that I know enough to know that I don't know enough. That's that there's always going to be more to learn, and that there will always be unique and unusual ways to make whiskey. And I love that. I love that the sky's the limit.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. So, one thing I did want to ask is, I see you in the marketing shots with the band, and you look just like you could easily be the fifth member of Metallica. Like you, like you fit right in. So are you a musician? I mean, cause you have the look and everything about you. So I'm just curious, do you play music?
Yeah, I play a little guitar, more vocals actually than anything, but I'm not that great. I'm better at making whiskey than I am playing music. But I have been, it's been really nice that the band has welcomed me in as part of their family. I'm able to, Hetfield lives here in Colorado, so I'll go up and share a cigar with him or two, and nice. We have a lot in common just in our mutual love of vintage cars and vintage motorcycles and the love of Colorado. And so we talk hunting and that sort of thing. So it really is. They're just very down to earth. They've been very welcoming. They've been very generous in kind of, they're what's refreshing is that they're artists first and foremost. They're musicians. So that's the way they approach their life and work. And so they've allowed me to have that room to be able to take the same approach with making whiskey.
That's very cool. Yeah. That's very, very good to hear. I mean, as a master distiller, obviously coming from Stranahan, like you said, you're used to graining a bottle. You're doing a lot of the process yourself. And now, I mean, it's a little bit different, but you still have that ability to blend and create. So that's got to be pretty important to you. So let's jump back to the whiskey because we're almost at the end of round one, actually. But Matt, let's talk about the palate. Talk about the finish. What are you picking up on that?
I get big stone fruit right away on the palate, picking up like a lot of fig, maybe like a touch of apricot, and there's some nice berries, some nice red fruit on it as well. And then I am getting like some a nuttiness, like I'm thinking like hazelnut, like a toasted hazelnut on the palate as well. And then it's got a nice spicy finish. I think the rye is really coming through with the finish on it. It's not 95.5 kick you in the teeth, but it lets you know that it's there. And it's a nice long heat that stays with you, and it coats the mouth really well too.
That is a good, I mean, I've used almost all those descriptors in talking about this whiskey. So you're definitely on point with that. And for me, it's very, it's about those layers, about the balance of, like you said, like if I want a 95% or 100% rye whiskey and, I want to get a little kicked around by that, I'll go out and find that rye. But what I like about this is all these nice layers of, the bourbon and the rye, and then that cask finish, which adds another layer of depth to the whiskey. I always look at, I approach creating a blend similar to like a 3-act play. You want a beginning, a middle, and an end. You want to draw the whiskey consumer in, the someone who's tasting the whiskey, draw them into the story of the whiskey, and then you've got the middle where you can't wait to see how this thing's going to end, and then you get the nice rolling finish that leaves you wanting to take another sip. And that's the way I approach it. I really feel like there needs to be a good balance like that.
Yeah, and I think with Matt, the thing that stands out to me on this is the finish, and it's really funny because earlier today when I was getting prepped and everything, I opened the bottle and took a little sip, and I didn't really get much of a finish, and I thought, well, that's really weird. There's just not much finish. And I went back and took a second drink, and then it just hit, and it just lingered and lingered and lingered like it's doing tonight. I mean, that finish on here, it's a nice spiciness. It's a rye spiciness. It's not overwhelming. Like you said, Rob, it's a nice balance, between that bourbon sweetness and those flavors, the finish, like you said, Matt, that comes from the wine. But yeah, I mean, this is a great combination. It really is. And at 90 proof, kind of surprising to me. It seems to me it maybe drinks a little bit out of its weight class. I don't know, Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it drinks a little hotter than that, a little warmer. So it's you did a great job of bringing all the flavor, but taming down some of the heat of the dragon there.
Yes, and that is, I mean, that's the trick. You want to be able to flavor it, you want to taste it. I've looked at it sometimes, being from Colorado, there's a lot of Mexican food here. That's my comfort food. And it's easy to, if you have a burrito or something, someone puts hot sauce all over it and all you can taste is hot sauce. You're not tasting anything inside that burrito. Then
right.
It's to me, you don't want to cover up anything. You want to balance everything. You want to take every single one of those flavor profiles and celebrate them and find a way to celebrate them in a nice layered fashion.
Yeah. Well, Rob, I was going to say one other thing. If you haven't noticed, Matt is also a big fan of rye. So there's yet another similarity, but he would stab somebody for a good 95.5, I think.
Yeah, there's some good ones out there. I do like my ryes. That's what I tend to lean that towards rye over bourbon. I love bourbon as well, but when given a choice, I tend to lean towards the rye side of things.
Matt, I'm thinking, yep.
Yeah, gotta kind of agree there. I think there's a nice art to it.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and that's been the great thing. We had Greg Metz on the show a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Metz, he's a good friend.
Man, it was great to talk to him, and Matt was just thrilled to be able to spend some time listening to him talk about the process. That guy's
he's a legend. I mean, he's we worked with him when we first started making tin cup whiskey. He was helping us with that recipe. Me and Jess Graber and just to see what he's done with Old Elk, that's here in Colorado as well.
Right.
He's such a cool, down to earth guy and knows what he's doing and enjoys what he's doing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, I tell you what, we're at the end of round one here. Matt, final thoughts though on the Blackened American Whiskey.
I'm impressed. I think it brings a whole lot of flavor. I think what you said, Rob, when you were saying it has layers, I think that's a really good way to describe it. It's got a little bit of something for everyone, and it's fun to play with it and digest the different layers in it. And it's definitely multifaceted. I enjoy that.
Excellent. Fantastic. I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Matt. I mean, I can't say it. Matt says it so eloquently. I just have to agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't want to say it's a surprise, but it's kind of a surprise. I mean, I just didn't expect it to be so good, but it really is, Rob. So very, very good whiskey here. So, all right, let's take a quick break. We'll get some a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Rob Dietrich, the Master Distiller and Blender with Blackened Whiskey, in just a minute. Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsoffrenchlick.com to learn more information and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round two of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, live in the Bourbon Life studios tonight, otherwise known as my basement, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great, Mark. I'm always happy to be back in the Bourbon Life studios. We're live. You're listening to us whenever it is that you decided to tune in, but we're appreciative of that. And we're also appreciative to have back for round or session number 2, the Master Distiller and Blender of Blackened Whiskey, Rob Dietrich. Rob, welcome back to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thanks, gentlemen. This has been good.
Yeah, we're glad you're on with us, man. And I know you got some stuff going on there that you got to take care of maybe tonight, but we appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us. And like I said earlier, I know you're a busy guy and you're traveling a lot and doing a lot of promotions and things for the brand, which is awesome for you. But we really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us tonight. I know our listeners are really going to going to enjoy it as well, especially those who are Metallica fans, right?
Yeah, well, it's absolutely my pleasure. I always love, I love talking about whiskey, and I love talking in depth with folks who love whiskey. I call myself a whiskey nerd. That's for me. I'd like to dive deep on how it's made and why it's made, and why you just, what decisions are made at what times in making a good whiskey. So it's great being able to talk to you guys with that.
Well, great. Well, we appreciate that. So round 2, we got something special poured up. Do you want to tell everybody, Rob, what we have here for our second round?
Yeah, so you've got that's the Cask Strength Black Album special release. So that Black Album, and this is going to give it a little more understanding of what we did here with this release. It's not only Cask Strength, but we have a process that we use that's very unique called Black Noise, and that is our sonic enhancement process. And being a whiskey nerd, as I was saying, I understand whiskey process and whiskey making, but adding the element of using sound was something new. And I've been in the music business, so I understand what that feels like and sounds like. But wrapping my head around it, I worked with the sound company, Meyer Sound, who created the proprietary device that we use to play music. And obviously we're using Metallica music,
right?
Where we played at a very low frequency in kind of a subwoofer style. So if you think about anytime you've been at a concert and you've walked in front of a speaker and you feel that vibration in your chest or that movement in your belly, that is exactly what we wanted to do, was harness the power of that wall of sound of Metallica and see what it could do inside the barrel. So when we have a batch, so if you look on your bottle there, you'll have a batch number at the top that you can actually go on the blackenedwhiskey.com. You can actually look up that playlist, see which band member selected the playlist. Sometimes I've been able to select playlists, and you can check out that playlist, and then you can actually take a photo of it with your phone, and it will populate on your Spotify or your Apple iTunes. You can listen to the music that was used to sonically enhance. So when we're playing at a low frequency, what that does is it creates a vibration. So when the pores of the wood, so if you think of a natural aging process, the heat of the day, the pores of the wood are open, the whiskey's pushing into the wood, and that char on the inside of the barrel, when that barrel is charred, it forms a caramelized band of sugar and flavor from inside the wood. So you're getting all those vanillins and all those natural sugars from the wood that the whiskey is interacting with. And when it's cold at night, it's pushing that whiskey back out into the belly of the barrel. And that's just like a motion. It's moving in and out on its own. That's where you're going to get 100% of your color. And you're going to get about 40 to 50% of the flavor from that barrel. So with sonic enhancement, we are aggressively vibrating the barrel so that whiskey's moving in and out of the wood at a rapid pace. And we, when we initially started this, we did some tests with it. We had a barrel that we had isolated that was the same whiskey, 2 different barrels. And we took one barrel and we stuck it in one room without the sonic enhancement equipment. The other we stuck in a room and we had the vibrating sonic enhancement process happening to it, which is what we call black noise. At the end of the finishing process, we took samples from both of those barrels. We sent them off to the lab, and we were so pleasantly surprised to see that all of the 9 flavor profile markers we were looking for in the barrel that we had done the black noise sonic enhancement to, every single one of those were elevated over the other barrel. So we had proof there that there is an actual change in the whiskey with the use of the vibration of the sound and vibration of music. So with the sample that you're sipping there, that came in a black box that mimics the album cover for the Black Album for Metallica. And we played the entire Black Album to that to just sonically enhance that particular batch. So it was a lot of fun for us. And of course, for anyone who is a Metallica fan like myself, you can actually go and take a little photo of that icon and populate that playlist and sip on that whiskey that you can sip on the whiskey that we had sonically enhanced with that playlist.
Yeah. And it's okay. So let's talk about the sonic enhancement, because I know some people, they may have heard of it in passing, or they may not even be familiar with it. And I think that there are probably some people out there that are like, wait a second, well, what? I mean, really? You're playing music? And I'll be honest, Matt and I, last year, we had 3-chord bourbon on. They have a process that they call Rhythmic Disruption, which involves sound waves. It's not music, but it is sound waves.
Right.
And after we had them on the show, they made believers of us, because everything we tasted, I went back and actually listened to that episode today again, and everything that they had, their blended bourbon, their Amplify Rye, their 12-bar reserve, everything they put out was pretty special, and we were both pretty amazed. So I know that there may be people out there that doubt that it makes a difference, or that it or say, oh, it's just a gimmick or some type of marketing. It's not. So I'm glad you explained that, Rob. I'm glad you went into detail and talked about the testing and the results and the things that happen. That makes a difference.
Yeah, and that's what's fantastic about it, and fantastic about it, and fascinating for me. You have to follow the science, and the science is going to tell you, it either works or it doesn't. And the beauty of this is getting that lab report back and realizing that we've not only we're not the first people to play music to barrels, not to whiskey or to wine, but I really feel like we were one of the first to take a very scientific approach and actually work with the sound company that creates that wall of sound for Metallica, and have them work with us. So we've got you got all these specialists in the room. You've got the musicians, you have the speaker makers and the sound makers, and then we've got the whiskey maker, whiskey makers, and all these guys who know their world really well. And now you put them all in the same room, and you're like, okay, let's find out where we can put this world and meld it together and create something cool and something innovative. And that's exactly what we've done with the Black Noise process.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll come back to that in just a second. I wanted to just jump in and get the nose, because I know we're going to continue this conversation, and I didn't want to forget and not talk about the whiskey. So Matt, what are you picking up in terms of the nose on this one?
Well, first off, I got to comment on the glass. My word, is this oily. It has left just a super, super oily, nice ring around the glass as I swirl it around.
Yeah, that's funny. Yep, it does.
That's the first thing I really had to pick up.
Yeah, I love those legs for sure.
Yeah, visually. And then the nose on this, it keeps changing for me. At first, I got a really strong connection and really good nose of caramel corn. And now it's got some earthy undertones to it. Like I'm picking up like something floral, like fresh cut flower stems, maybe not like roses or like a floral nose in that sense, but like the earthy smell that you might get from like the actual cutting of the stem of a flower. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
It does. I've used like fresh cut hay, because there's a smell. Growing up in Colorado, there's a lot of hay fields. So, that kind of fresh cut hay where the hay is still recently alive.
Yeah. And then I think the rye is really coming through. I'm picking up a good amount of mint on the nose is coming through. Like spearmint is really coming through strong for me as it sits out here as well. It's just so funny. I thought I had it figured out at first with the caramel corn, and then it kept changing. It's really, really good though. Really inviting. And there's apricot in there as well. Like some orange apricot. Sorry, I could sit here and
it's going to go on and on. That's all right, man.
Enough out of me.
No, that's, and it's interesting. I tell that to people when you're nosing a good whiskey, I could sit there and spend 10, 15 minutes just nosing, because there's so many little layers, and you're trying to identify and just kind of get to the heart of what's going on inside that whiskey. And what helps a lot of people too, I think, when I've done whiskey tastings with folks, I try not to, what I call leading the witness. I try not to lead the witness by, planting something in their head. I let them tell me what it is they're tasting, because it's their palate. It's your palate. What you're tasting is right. And I think some people are afraid to offer an opinion sometimes, because they're afraid they're going to be wrong. But what I encourage people to understand is that it doesn't matter you're not going to be wrong because it's your palate. It's your experiences of life. You know, if it smells like grandpa's garage and grass clippings and used motor oil, then that's what it smells like, you know, an old cigar ash or something. But, you know, if sometimes I've used my experiences in Colorado to describe, you know, flavor profiles like, you know, tack shed leather and, you know, the smell of sagebrush after a rainstorm. You know, there are these kind of certain smells, and like that, you know, for you is the cutting of the, you know, flower stems or something botanical about it. You know, like that hay, that fresh cut hay kind of reminds me of rye, you know, like kind of that rye element. And then having that cask strength, I mean, for me, that's where it's fun. You know, we're all adults, so we get to enjoy the whiskey the way we want to. If you want to add a couple of drops of water to that whiskey and let it open up and bloom, you want to taste it just like it is at the high strength. You want to put an ice cube in it and let it, you know, just like simmer in there a little bit. All these choices are up to you, but you get to start at that high proof and work your way to whatever level you find is desirable.
Yeah, and I can't add anything additional to what Matt had on the nose at all. I did pick up that floral after you said it was the power suggestion. I was already picking up some of the mint, but yeah, very, very enjoyable nose for sure. So, Rob, when we get back talking about the process, you know, you're talking about playing music, but it's at a low frequency, so it's not really music that people could set. I mean, it's not like you're going to walk in and hear the Black Album playing. Is that correct?
You hear kind of like a muffled version of it. It's definitely like a low frequency, muffled. You're feeling the motion. You can hear the motion, but it's you know, if you took like kind of your upper end speakers and remove them, that's kind of the sound that's left behind is what you're experiencing, because we're looking for the motion as well as the songs, because you think about, you know, even the front label of the Blackened bottle is a sound wave. You know, we captured the sound wave there, so that represents the black noise sonic enhancement process. But it's also an Easter egg for the Metallica fan, because that is an actual sound wave that we took of James Hetfield, the lead singer. That is an actual sound wave of him singing the word blackened.
Oh,
so it's a real little Easter egg in there. But at the same time, you know, you're looking at those peaks and valleys in that sound wave, and that represents motion, that represents movement. So that's all movement that's happening inside the barrel. Those peaks and valleys, depending on what song it was picked or what album you chose to use for the sonic enhancement.
That's really cool. Just the sound wave. And I was going to talk about the bottle probably in the next round, the label and everything. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I noticed that was a sound wave. I did not know that was actually James singing the word blackened, which of course is the Blackened is one of the I guess is the first song off of which Injustice for All. It's off of one of the albums.
It is, yeah, Injustice for All, and it's also the name of their record label.
Yeah, right.
We've got it's one of their most popular songs and their record label. So it was you know, and they when the band set out to make a whiskey, they really wanted to make this whiskey stand on its own, and they didn't want to, you know, go to a large company and have them create a whiskey for them and just slap a Metallica label on it. You know, they wanted to leave some Easter eggs on there for people who are fans of the band, and, you know, things that they'll recognize. But really, the word blackened is to acknowledge the black noise process and the black char of the barrel. You know, this is you know, we've submitted our whiskey to several spirits competitions. We've gotten gold, double gold. Nice. You know, so it's been really exciting in these you know, on these panels to be able to show that the whiskey does stand on its own.
So when you take the whiskeys, you got ryes, you got bourbons. It's always the same blend? Is that correct, or do you switch up the blend on those?
I keep it. You know, I use the base recipe of the blend of you know, the portions. I try and keep it balanced. But when I'm tasting different ones, you know, I'm always take the last. You know, the last batch that we made, and I use that as my control. So, now I'm nosing and tasting, and I'm making sure that we are as close as possible with this next batch. So we might adjust something a little bit more here or a little bit less here, depending on, you know, maybe I got a couple of astringent barrels or a couple of like heavy duty rye barrels that I want to balance out with a little bit more bourbon. It's always fine tuning and dialing in that hot rod, you know?
Yeah. So are the barrels, are they distilled for you guys, or are they barrels that you guys have gone around and just from different distilleries, things that people you're familiar with, distilleries you're familiar with, or products that you like? Are they barrels you guys are picking from those distilleries and then bringing them in to blend? Or is it somebody that's actually distilling what you want specifically for this?
Initially, that's what Dave did, with all his relationships with all these great distilleries. He was able to kind of hand select these whiskeys. And then we've been able to, since then, in the course of creating our blends, we're laying whiskey down now, so okay. we've got it for the future. So, in the beginning we were buying that expensive already aged stuff. And now, thinking about the future, we're laying whiskey down now so we can have it later.
And this is also finished though in the black brandy cask as well, correct?
Correct. So that's the same recipe, same cask finish, it's just a cask strength, and that's something that we always enjoy, having that cask strength to be able to play with.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you also about the process in terms of playing the music. How long does the whiskey actually stay in the barrels for the secondary finishing? Is there a set time, or is it just by taste when you think that it's reached that profile that you want?
Yep. I let the whiskey tell me when it's ready.
Gotcha.
So I'll put it in there, and it really depends on my cask finishes, how fresh the used barrels are. Okay. I try and use them 3 times. And some of the bigger whiskey companies will use a cask finish barrel maybe 5 times. But I like to just keep it at 3 because I feel like we're, and so if it's like a third use cask finish, it's probably gonna stay in there longer to get that same flavor profile. But if it's a fresh barrel, fresh cask finish, it might only take a couple of weeks, or it might take a week, might take 2 weeks. Whereas on a third use, it might take up to 10 or 14.
Gotcha. So during that time it's in the barrel, is that music, is the black noise process always going, or is the black noise process just a limited time while it's in that secondary barrel?
24/7. It's playing. Right. It's playing the whole time. As soon as it goes in there, and our batch is sitting there doing the cask finishing, that's when we're playing that on a loop. That's why it needs its own room, because I would just over time that drive anybody a little batty. So it's got its own little section.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, you have a warehouse that's like out in the middle of nowhere, or you got a lot of soundproofing in the walls, or?
Yeah. It's got its own little spot for sure.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I like the packaging. So we talked a little bit about the bottle and the label, but this bottle comes in its own box. It's got metallic on the front, but you've got the little flyer included that has different information about the brand, different drinks as well. But then there's also the challenge coin, which was pretty unique. But so I mean, with you being in the military, I just wondered, is that kind of a tribute to the military?
It is. Yeah, it's absolutely something that we had talked about, that it was important to me. And to bring anybody up to speed about how a challenge coin is accepted. So it's traditionally started in the military, and police and firefighters use it as well. And then it's kind of evolved into the spirits world and other aspects of the world. But generally, a challenge coin is something you receive in the military for being a part of a unique squad, or having done gone through a unique experience. And they make a coin specifically for that. I've got my military coins, and the way you receive a challenge coin is that you receive it in a handshake, so that the coin will be palmed in your hand. That hand is reached out, and it shakes your hand, and they transfer the coin into your hand, and that's how you receive it. And the interesting side note, that's how I found out I had the job with Blackened. Was I went out and I met with the band at their recording studio in California. And I interviewed with all of them, and
wow, that would be stressful.
It was. I hadn't been on a job interview in like 15 years either, so I was like,
sorry to interrupt you there, Rob. I'm just thinking like,
it was a little intense. Yeah, like I hadn't been, I was a little rusty as far as job interviews go, and then 2, it's like I'm meeting the band and being interviewed by them at the same time. So it was a surreal experience for sure. But and James asked me about my military background. He said, I heard you were deployed a few times, and asked me about the military. And he said, well, I've got something for you. And he reached into his pocket and he stood up and he held out his hand, and I could see he had a coin in his hand, and he gave me the handshake and he transferred it over, and it was a Metallica coin, and it said, I am family on it. And it was a Metallica coin. And he said, welcome to the family. And,
oh man.
Wow. Gave me this hug, and I was like, that's when I found out I had the job. So I was blown away. He knew how to hand off a challenge coin, which I thought was really cool. That just he knew the details of that, but that meant a lot to me, and that's how I found out I had the job. Man, at the same time,
that's pretty awesome. That's beyond awesome. I mean, that's incredible, man. I'm glad. I mean, these guys, they sound like great guys. They
are
definitely. So. And as a fan, people are like, oh, I'd love to meet them too. So you've had that opportunity not just to meet them, interview with them, and then become part of their family. I mean, that's a really cool story, Rob. Definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely an honor. And like I said, I'm humbled by the whole experience. It's just a lot of fun.
Yep. So Matt, let's jump back, because we're at the end of round 2 here, but let's jump back, talk about the whiskey in terms of the palate and the finish. Which you pick up on that?
On the palate, first, it's got just to talk all the way through it, it's got a really great mouthfeel. It coats the tongue, the whole palate really, really well. Nice and oily. It really does stick with the tongue there. Just a great coating on it. But I get a nice rye heat right away, and it's like an earthy heat. And it might just be that we were talking about Denver and great Mexican food, but I'm thinking it's like a hatch pepper kind of heat, like a spicy kind of pepper tamale type of heat. And I think a little bit of that corn is coming through as well with that. And that's why I kind of think tamale. But then it's like kind of leads to like a little bit of a brittle, thinking like a toasted buttery sugar brittle. And some of that apricot as well. And then just a nice long finish again. Same with the first one, but even nicer, even more of a nice oily coating, I think, on the finish.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. How do you top that, Rob? I should just go first and say, I taste something really sweet, and then there's a lot of spice. But it does have a great finish, and it like I said, the first time when I tasted the blackened, I was like, okay, there's no finish, but then it hit on the second taste. And this one just, there's no question about it. I mean, it hits you, that finish is there, and it lingers. It gave me just a little bit of a hug, which is nice. I like that. It's not a burn. It's just a nice warm feeling as it glides down your throat there. But man, that spiciness just lingers in my mouth, and just really enjoy the sensation, Matt. Like you said, it coats your entire mouth. Feel it on the tongue, feel it on the roof of my mouth, the back of my throat. Yeah, it's really good. Again, I don't want to say I'm surprised, but I'm pleasantly surprised by this, Rob. Really.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think one of the things, sometimes it takes that first sip and rolling around over your sides of your tongue and your mouth and kind of coating the mouth a little bit, that really acclimates the mouth. And then that second sip or that third sip, you're going to start finding those long, the finishes, right, or that, and really dive into some of the flavor aspects and the nosing, olfactory aspects of the whiskey.
Yeah. Very nice. All right. So for me, Matt, 2 thumbs up. What do you think, man?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to compare this with what we drank in the first round, which was the American whiskey, because those are similar blends, correct? One is just more.
It is the same blend. Yeah. So same blend of whiskey, same cask finishing with the black brandy, same sonic enhancement. We just took it at the proof it came out of the barrel.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was 112.05, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's just funny. The differences are certainly there. It's almost like they're two different products, but you can see that there's some backbone from one and the other. It's a fun compare and contrast experiment between the two.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Very, very pleasant.
Yeah, and at 112, this is so approachable to me. Of course, I like higher proof bourbons, but even still, it's something that I can drink it. The other one I said, drink a little bit higher. This one, it's, to me, I don't want to say it's an easy drinker, but it's very approachable at 112. So Matt, what do you think?
I think it drinks right on at about 112.
Yeah.
So I right where it needs to be.
Yeah, really good. Definitely. All right, guys, let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Rob Dietrich, the Master Distiller and Blender with Blackened Whiskey in just a minute. Located just east of Lake Tahoe and the Sierra Nevada mountains, Frey Ranch Distillery was founded by fifth-generation Nevada farmers. Our grain-to-glass bourbon is made using a 4-grain mash bill, including a non-GMO corn, rye, wheat, and barley, all of which is 100% sustainably grown on the 1,500-acre Frey Ranch. And our commitment to excellence shows with a recent gold medal win at the 2020 Whiskeys of the World and USA Spirits competitions. Find out more at www.freyranch.com.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final session, period, round, whatever you want to call it, of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. With me, as always, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, you stuck around for the third round, man. I really appreciate that.
Oh, Mark, I wouldn't miss the third round for anything. I mean, besides, we've made it this far. You might as well stick around for the exciting conclusion, right?
That's right, man. And we got one coming up I think you're going to enjoy, definitely.
I sure hope so. I'm based on the first two rounds, I think we're definitely going to have a good time because we're back with the Master Distiller and Blender of Blackened Whiskey, Rob Dietrich. He came back with us, so Rob, welcome back for round 3.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you. You guys are in for a little treat here. It's gonna be a fun expression.
Yeah, very, very nice. So, and you're actually, I think you're going to be able to drink along with us on this one. Is that right?
Yep.
That's great.
I'm prepared.
Awesome. So you want to tell everybody what we've got poured up on this round?
Yeah. So this is an exciting collaboration that I did with Drew Colesveen, the master distiller for Willett Distillery. So this is the Blackened X Willett collaboration. This is the inaugural release. This is the beginning of our Masters of Whiskey series.
Okay.
So the Masters of Whiskey series is where I'm working with other distillers to create a specialty limited release and release it once a year in collaboration with another master distiller. So it's a lot of fun working with these guys, working within my community, seeing how everybody approaches. Everybody approaches from a different direction. And I had such an enjoyable time working with Drew Colesveen. We discovered very quickly that our palates were very similar. And what we had requested was I wanted to make this 100% with all Willett whiskey. So this is all whiskey. So when we originally started, he said, well, what are you interested in? What do you want to try? And so it was basically like a kid in a candy store. It's like, okay, well, here's the warehouses of Willett. Go ahead and throw some numbers out there, throw some barrels out there. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is like I couldn't hardly contain my excitement when we first started doing this. So they sent me out a bunch of there was low rye recipe and then a high rye recipe and a variety of ages of those recipes. And I was tasting those back and forth because it was right in the middle of COVID. And then we decided, well, I'm going to go out to Kentucky and we're going to sit down and do a whiskey tasting. So we sat down. We probably had 20 to 30 samples of low rye, high rye, anything from 4-year up to 8-year whiskey, and we just kind of dug in. Like, well, we had them all sit out there, and we're like, well, we just made our own batches. And we were getting up, and there was a big long table, and we're just picking a batch here, and we're making our own blends. And what I did first was I poured a sample from every single one of the bottles out there, and I had it sitting in front of this so I could nose them and then go down the line and nose it, and then kind of get an idea of where I wanted my base to start from, of the age and recipe. And then from there, then you just kind of add and you layer in to that base. So we weren't really talking too much. We were kind of making our own thing, and then we'd make a recipe, and then we'd stop They're like, okay, let's compare notes. And right away we discovered that we were within like close to 20 to 30% of similarity. Like we were close to 70% of similarity, like there was only about 20% off. So as by the time we finished, we did a few more samples of our own, we kept getting closer and closer in our palates, and we're not even looking at each other. We're just like grabbing bottles and making blends and tasting. And I remember Drew even saying something to someone. He said, yeah, it freaked me out. It was crazy how close our palates were in our olfactory. So it was really exciting, a lot of fun to work with him. And we celebrated creating when we finally hit on the batch that we liked. And again, this was a marriage of a low rye recipe and a high rye recipe from Willett Distillery. And then once we had that, I knew I wanted to do a finish, but I wasn't sure. So I started messing around with some ideas for the finishing. I'd already had Madeira in mind. And as soon as I tasted this, the spiciness of the rye, I knew that the Madeira was going to be a beautiful balance on the kind of the balance of that low rye, high rye recipe with that Madeira cask. And then Drew and I took turns. We both picked the playlist from the Metallica discography, and I let him take first crack at it because I'd had the opportunity to select a couple playlists prior to that. And I wanted him to have full access of anything that he could think of, and then I finished off with songs I thought would balance that out. So we had a blast doing this. We had a really good time, and we've gotten pretty close because of it. And and really this kind of relationship started. I was already a Willett fan, big fan of what they did, okay. But they were good friends with the Colesveens were good friends with Dave Pickerel. My predecessor at Blackened here. And, Dave was known for countless projects that he's worked on all over the country. And he helped the Colesveens get Willett started, get to, kind of create their recipes and get them moving again with their distillery. So he was a huge inspiration for them and good friends with the Colesveens. So I think that was another reason that they wanted to do this project as well, was kind of our nod to Dave and right. his legacy, and also stretching our legs in what we like to do in our own artistry in creating a phenomenal whiskey.
So was it something where did you actually reach out to them and say, hey, this is something I'd like to do? Or
we
was
did.
It a conversation? Okay. I didn't know if it was something that maybe they had reached out, or it was just a kind of a joint thing that there was mutual admirations there that said, hey, let's just get together and do this. So
yeah, well, Drew, he'd known about me through, my days at Stranahan's and working with Tin Cup and single malt whiskey and pioneering kind of the American single malt whiskey category. And so there was a mutual respect there that we were both excited to work with each other. And again, it was just so much fun. Drew is just such a great guy to work with, and very, very talented distiller, very talented and with his flavor profile as well. And so we had a lot of fun with it. And of course, that Dave Pickerel connection really kind of it helped tie everything together.
Yeah. And for people that don't know Dave, I mean, and I never met Dave, unfortunately. I wish I had. But I mean, he's kind of the father of craft distilleries. I mean, he's worked with so many brands, when he was doing his consulting, but he also spent 14 years or so, I think, at Maker's Mark. So, he was involved in a lot of different brands and I just had a lasting legacy on the industry. So yeah, but that's cool. Sure. You guys can do this, and it really kind of pays tribute to Dave as well. So that's really cool. Matt, what are you picking up over there on this one?
Well, first off, I think I want to reach out to Willett and just ask if I can have the same experience just for a day that you had, Rob, because that's like all right, I've just done this, I can die tomorrow, a happy man type.
The Bourbon Life X Willett, the Bourbon Life X Willett brand right now.
Yeah,
it really was. It was a dream come true for me to just wander around through the barrel houses out there with Drew and popping bungs and pulling samples out. And I mean, like I said, I was a kid in a candy shop. It was so much fun.
Yeah, that sounds like that would be pretty much my if I had
I've seen Matt run loose with a drill in a rick house. It's not a pretty sight. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, got your drill and your nails and a little glass, and yeah.
Oh man.
Anyway,
yeah. All right, Matt. I'm
back
sorry.
to the
Yeah.
nose
Sorry,
on
man.
this one. It's got a really nice zesty. I pick up a lot of orange, a lot of zest on the nose. There's like a little bit of ginger too. I think I'm getting, and some of that cream. Like it's got a sweet cream nose on it as well. But I pick up a lot of zest, a lot of citrus.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's definitely some of the descriptors I've gone through. And the orange zest is definitely there. Like, and I get like a little bit of a mint as well. A little hint of a mint in there.
See, now that's the power of suggestion, Rob. I mean, as soon as you said that, it was like, yep, there's mint. But again, I'm going back and I'm picking up these slight little hints of leather off of this. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. I guess maybe the finish on this one, this is Madeira, right? Is that what Madeira cask?
Yeah, I did a Madeira cask finish.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, coming up with a little bit of leather on that nose for me.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards tack shed leather over like biker leather. A little bit different flavor profile there.
Yeah, it's like leather biker pants after they've slid about 50 feet on the asphalt. That after kind of smell you
after
get.
After they've been to Sturgis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, see, I'm laughing too much, Rob. You got me laughing. People are going to write bad reviews on the podcast now because I've laughed.
Well, it is 3 whiskeys in too, so that's.
I was going to say,
towards the end, it's supposed to tickle you up a little bit.
It happens, we get to that point. So now with regard to the barrels, you bring them in. Do you guys actually bring all the barrels in that you're going to be working with to a specific location? I mean, do you have an actually existing warehouse where everything is housed and then you blend it?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. So right now we're doing all of our production in upstate New York.
Okay. All right.
So we have a facility up there that we're working with, and we'll bring the barrels in. Our whiskey's stored there. Our barrels are stored there. But for example, doing the Willett, we actually had those barrels shipped up to upstate New York, and that's where we did our blending. And it is cask strength, so you're able to enjoy it at the cask strength. So we were able to bring the barrels up there, do our in-house, do the marriage really, since it's all Willett whiskey, and then do the Madeira cask finish, and play our playlist during the black
noise. Yeah. So, and this one's 109.6 proof. I don't know. You may have said that, and I just forgot. If you said it, I just wanted to throw that out there. So, yeah. So, I was going to ask you with back to the black noise process, because you talk about the different playlists. I'm curious, have you guys done testing? Is there a different response, different production? I mean, with regard to the barrels and the distillate, once you actually play different songs and different set lists, does it make a difference how the whiskey finishes?
Yeah. So given the different soundtracks, and you think of, again, using that, the description of the sound wave on the bottle of Blackened, it's got the peaks and the valleys. You're going to find, if it's a much more heavy hitting song, like a more aggressive song, it's going to be like very, rapid peaks and valleys. And if you think of it's like more of a ballad, you're going to have these lower peaks and valleys, a different interaction with the wood. So there are subtle changes with each batch. My job as the blender is to ensure that the quality and consistency is always the same. So I'm always basing that off of the last batch that we created and using that as a control. And then this next batch, being able to use that as the base, but then using that sound list, that playlist, to create just a little bit of a difference in the whiskey. And you can taste the whiskey side by side and see the difference.
Okay. Well, that's what I just wanted to know. I figured with the different sound waves that it would have different impacts on the barrels and the flow of the whiskey or the distillate in and out of the wood. So I wondered if you could really taste that difference based on the set list. I meant to ask that in the last round. So that's really cool that you can pick that up. But you do blend for consistency of taste. So your batch, you guys have, this is batch 114 that we've got here, but I'm not sure how many batches you guys have. Do you actually have that many batches that have been put out?
That's not 114 batches of cask strength. That happened to be that batch that we released, and that was a cask strength. at that number.
Well, I think that's batch 111, right, Matt? Is that what the bottle you've got? Is it 111?
Yeah, 111 was the second one that we drank.
Yeah, and the first one we drank is batch 114, which was just what I'd call the baseline, the standard product. But you've not put out 100. I mean, have you guys done 114 different batches?
No, so we've actually done. We started at batch 81. So another Easter egg. That was the year that Metallica was formed. It was 1981. So batch 81 was where we started. That's where they decided to start the numbering process, basically.
Okay, all right. Well, that makes sense. I was gonna say, man, that's a lot of batches because the brand actually was it 2018. Is that right? That the brand actually started?
Yeah. Okay. September of 2018. And then again, Dave had been, they had only been launched for 3 months, and Dave passed away on November 1st.
Right. Today's the third. Yeah. Well, I mean, not when people are listening, but as we're recording, I mean, it is the third anniversary of his passing. Yeah.
Third anniversary of Dave's passing to Dave Pickerel.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah,
certainly
today for sure. Yeah. No doubt.
Cheers.
So how much of the flavor profile are you getting input from the band on what they're looking for? And are you relying on your experience, especially in the past of Stranahan's when you were working with the Snowflake batch? You were finishing in a lot of different barrels. So I assume you know how to read a finished product pretty well. So how are you able to take your experience in doing that, especially in finishing whiskeys and using different casks and knowing what different casks are available to get different profiles? How much of that plays into this and releasing your final products based on a possible flavor profile that you're looking for?
Yeah. So, as far as the band is concerned, they've been very, very adamant that like, look, whiskey, we know music, you're not going to tell us how to make music, and we're not going to tell you how to make whiskey. We just trust that you're going to make a good whiskey. And so they're not really doing any of the input. The input that I am getting back is when I do create a whiskey and some of them are trying it and tasting it. And I'm getting the feedback from them that like, oh, this is great, or they enjoy it. That's what I'm looking for. I just want to know that they enjoy it. I'll worry about the details and the nuances. And Matt, to your second part of your question, that is where I really kind of learned my blending skills was working with the Snowflake and creating those unique one-off elements. And and it was really kind of pretty extraordinary. I was just having some fun and just, doing a limited release, and people just started showing up earlier and earlier. And then they started camping out. And then it became this whole phenomena where people were camping out in December in Denver on the sidewalk for days at a time to be able to purchase 2 bottles of whiskey. And so I always took that very seriously. I always had fun making the whiskey, but, I'd spend time out there overnight with those guys. I'd walk around and, sip whiskey with people in their tents. And, everybody's camping out there and there's a camaraderie that kind of happened. And I was able to really hone in my skill set on creating those blends and those profiles. So being able to approach, making the Willett collaboration with Drew Colesveen out of a variety of samples. The same with creating the blend for Blackened Whiskey. It is really maintaining that balance between all those flavor profiles and finding where, it's, you could throw a bunch of whiskey in a bottle, but if you want to make sure it's balanced. It's like, going to a fast food restaurant and taking a cup and hitting the soda fountain and hitting every single one of the nozzles all the way down, and it's just going to be sugar at the end of it. You're not going to really get a good balance. Now, if you spend some time with the orange drink and a little bit of the Coca-Cola, and you fine tune it, then you're creating your own blend that might have a different profile. But that's where I approach it with the whiskey, is always making sure that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and finding those nuances that support each other to create a really spectacular whiskey.
And speaking of which, let's talk about the flavors on this one, Matt. What do you get on the Blackened X Willett?
I get a big palette of the orange coming through again. Really zesty, a lot of orange. I get some cranberry too. It's got like a touch of some tartness in there, which I really like. There's also like something herbal and some rye spice that I'm picking up. I'm getting like coriander and cardamom, especially like kind of some baking spices in there, and just a really, really great taste. It just has really great flavor. It tastes well. It's layered. It's complex. It's got good heat, a great finish to it that sticks around. It's not drying. It's not off-putting at all. It's very, very well done. Very well balanced. Very well layered.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoy it. Again, similar descriptors in our flavor profiles, and I love the long lingering finish on that. This is something that and it has layers in the finish, even like not just layered all the way through, but that finish is it sticks around. You can still feel, you're still tasting elements of it in your mouth, moments after you've for a while after you've had that sip. So
yeah, pretty what really strikes me about this, the first two that we had, I talked about the finish. It was long, it was very spicy, and I enjoyed that tingle. Get that tongue tingle that goes with it. With this one, there's a sweetness on the finish that I get. I get it on the palate initially, and then it kind of twists over to that spiciness, but then that sweetness comes back and kind of blends in with the spiciness on the finish. So it's just kind of it's like my palate can't decide whether it wants to taste sweet or spiciness, and it keeps going back and forth between the two, and it's just really, really kind of confusing my palate, but it's really good. I really like that.
Yeah, with you there, Mark. I gotta echo what you're saying. I think you hit it right on. A lot of times with a finish, you think, oh, that's a good finish because I just get a lot of heat. I get a lot of like lingering heat, but this actually has lingering flavor. Like there is the heat on the finish, but there's also flavor there. There's that sweet. I'm picking up like there's like a little bit of apple coming through on the finish to me, and like good cinnamon, good heat, good flavor, but it's actually flavor on the finish. It's complex. It's got me thinking.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like cinnamon buttered apples. When I'm making a good pork chop, I'll saute up some apples and butter and cinnamon, little cinnamon sugar. And that's one of the things I love, especially with cooking. I love cooking. Is
oh my God, Matt. How many more similarities can we get here, Matt? Come on. Matt's worked in the food industry for years. It worked at a bakery for years. So yeah, kind of crazy.
Well, and I think that's where, your palate comes from. Like if you like creating a great meal and cooking, finding that, those flavors. I love sweet and savory. I love finding like you get a nice savory pork chop, and then you get that nice little buttery apple cinnamon drizzle, on top of that. Now I'm getting hungry.
Pork chops and applesauce.
Yeah. Right. But that's kind of what I was going for with this whiskey too. Is that seeing how the spiciness of that rye, that high rye in there, that high rye recipe. I wanted to give it like a little sweetness, that sweet and savory kind of aspect. With that finish, and that's where the Madeira came in.
Yeah, well, it definitely worked. I mean, it's a great combination. See, now I'm gonna have to go out and find a bottle because this is really good, Rob. I mean, it's really, and again, I don't want to say I'm just like, oh, I'm surprised, but I really am surprised. I mean, it really is. It's a great whiskey, I think. Matt, what about you, man?
Yeah, there's like no reason we should be surprised based on the first two things that we drank,
exactly
and
right.
Knowing the pedigree of where you came from, Rob, and what's going into the bottle here. There's no reason we or anyone else should be surprised by what we're drinking, but it went above and beyond what I was expecting. All three rounds.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, gentlemen, I'm glad that you enjoyed all of them. That's the biggest compliment a whiskey maker could get is someone enjoying their product. So I absolutely appreciate that.
Yeah, it's funny, Rob, because I guess kind of going along with that, when you say, okay, it's Blackened, and everybody sees the videos and they know Metallica's connected with it. People think, oh, it's a celebrity brand, and there's, they've just taken something and put their name on it, and nothing could be further from the truth than that. I mean, is that fair? I think that's
absolutely the right assessment, because it was important to them that they didn't want it to be a celebrity brand. They wanted the whiskey to stand on its own first. That was the most important thing. And of course, having that was that's why they went with Dave, initially was to
right.
like, okay, well, we're masters of our craft. We're masters of making whiskey. Let's find a master of making, we're masters of making music. Let's find a master at making whiskey. And, obviously they hit the nail on the head with Dave.
Right.
And able to really lean on the whiskey skill set. And that was the key. And that's what ultimately why I decided to move on from Stranahan's and join the Blackened family and team, because it really, that the passion and the attention to quality and the attention to the uniqueness of the whiskey, and the way the band approached it, the way our Blackened team approaches it, it really, that's what impressed me. Again, when I first looked into getting this, taking on this job, I went out and bought the whiskey. That's
right.
That's where you start. You start where the rubber hits the road, and where the whiskey hits the glass. And that was, as soon as I tasted it, I said, yeah, I'm in.
Well, I mean, Rob, you said that they hit the nail on the head with Dave, but I'm going to say, I mean, I think they've obviously done a great job in terms of bringing someone in to follow in those footsteps and continue what they wanted to do. I mean, you've done an excellent job with this. And I'm telling you, this Blackened times Willett, holy shit.
Well, it's very kind of you. I like to say that, that Dave created an incredible legacy, and it's an honor for me to uphold some of his legacy, at least a portion of it, with Blackened. And and I'm not going to fill those shoes. I brought my own shoes,
right,
to continue on and really keep shining that light on all the incredible work that Dave did in our industry, and to keep on doing my own thing as well, and enjoying where I'm going with my own creations, and having fun at the same time, honoring the legendary Blackened whiskey that Dave left behind.
Yep. That's great. So speaking of, talk about the past, talk about the present, let's look at the future real quick. What's going on in terms of, for you, for the brand? I mean, what does the future look like for both of you?
Well, we've got, again, this is the Blackened X Willett that you're trying right now. That is the very beginning of our Masters of Whiskey series. So I'm working with a great distiller and a great distillery for next year's release. We're always about
any hints on that. Any hints on that, Rob?
Not at this time, unfortunately. I would love to be able to drop a nugget or two, but we're
breaking news.
Keeping the cards close to the chest on this one. But I will tell you guys will not be disappointed. It's so exciting. As I was explaining, with the Willett collaboration, I wanted to start at the top of Mount Everest and then go up from there. So that's really kind of where I felt like we were going. And so we've got some great and very talented whiskey makers that I'm collaborating with, and then I've got some other expressions that I'm working on as well. That I'm always trying to find something new and unique to mess around with. So. Keep your eyes peeled to the horizon. There's some fun stuff coming.
Awesome. Now, I know there'd been a talk back originally when the brand started about possibly doing a distillery. Is there still talk about that, or is that a possibility, or do you guys have an actual distillery already in place, or is it?
So right now we're working with a production facility, but we certainly do want to get our own distillery. That's something we were looking forward to. COVID certainly changed kind of the forward direction on that one.
Right.
It was kind of smart that we were a little more lean, didn't have that overhead,
right.
For the distillery during that time. But we are charging forward with our with those ideas and trying to find the perfect location and for me, I love having my own distillery. I love having the backyard to be able to create in, and I've got a great lab at my house that I've set up, and I've got a great lab at our production facility that I get to use. But there's nothing like having your own facility. So we are certainly looking to the future for that.
Okay. So where can our listeners find Blackened Whiskey in terms of social media? Where can they find information about you guys?
So Blackened American Whiskey on Instagram. And then we also have a great Facebook presence as well. And if you're looking for the whiskey, the easiest way to find it is to go to blackenedwhiskey.com. There is a store locator section on there. You can click on that, type in your zip code, and that zip code will populate stores in your area that will carry the blackened. And you should be able to find those all, whatever expressions are available in your areas.
Yeah. And I would highly recommend that you do that.
Yeah, especially with the Blackened X Willett collaboration. As soon as that's been hitting the shelves, it's been flying off the shelves. So we've been really excited to see the response from the whiskey enthusiast community, and I've just had such a fun time, creating the whiskey with Drew, and then just to see the response out there. I mean, the bottles are flying off the shelves. So. See if you can snap up one of those bottles as soon as you can before they disappear.
Oh yeah, we may have missed the boat here in Kentucky.
Yeah, they were out there for a bit.
Yeah, we'll work on that though. All right, Rob, we've had a great time tonight. Anything else before we wrap it up you'd like to add or say to everybody?
Well, I appreciate what you guys do. This is there's such a big whiskey drinking community out there, and being able to allow people access to distillers like myself and like Greg Metzy. It's what you guys do that helps keep everybody informed on the whiskey community in the world. And I just appreciate what you guys do, and can't wait to have a dram in person sometime with you.
Well, thank you very much. Definitely appreciate that. Looking forward to it for sure. Matt, how about you, man? Anything you want to add?
Hey, Rob, thanks so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with us and letting us in a day of the life and behind the scenes in Blackened Whiskey and what you all are doing. It really has been impressive to hear not only your story, but to see what you're putting out and see the reflection that I think that your personality and your experience brings forward in this product. And it really is far beyond what I was expecting. So thank you for that. This has been a treat. It really has.
Well, that's very kind of you, Matt. I appreciate that. And it's easy to talk about the things you love, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rob, you can just start calling Matt Mini Me if you'd like to,
Hopefully.
All right. Well, Rob, we appreciate it very much. Appreciate you taking the time. I know you're, like I said before, several times, you're a busy guy. So we appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. Our listeners, I know, are just definitely going to love this episode. Matt and I definitely did. Very impressed with the whiskey as well. And just really had a good time. So before I wrap it up though, I just want to thank our listeners. Appreciate all their support. And I also want to thank all our sponsors. And of course we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. We appreciate their support as well as the support of all of our sponsors. And I guess with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full and may you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Whether it's rye, sour mash Tennessee whiskey, or bourbon, Davidson Reserve has something delicious to offer any whiskey lover's palate. Pick up a bottle of one of our award-winning Davidson Reserve whiskeys from your local retailer today. Visit www.davidsonreserve.com for more information. And cheers to drinking local.